In this episode, The Real-Time Idiot and the Autopig by Alan Barker. What sorts of deceptions could they carry out? What countermeasures could be adopted, when it really does exist and the consequences are so far-reaching? Isn't it unconscionable to leave the public in the dark about it? Could a politician resist abusing this secret power? For the purposes of the rest of this video, I will assume our composite victim has been injected or implanted somehow with a brain bug that transmits tracking information, as well as audio and video of the sights, sounds, and internal subvocalized thoughts the non-consenting victim experiences. This is something like an advanced form of the CIA's acoustic kitty project from the 1960s, where a cat was wired up as a motor-controlled listening device to be used in spying. The difference is many years of technological refinement. Integrated circuits were not even available then, let alone nanoscale devices, and the obvious difference that a human being is being tortured. I assume that this device can also inject sounds which the victim perceives as if he or she heard or thought them in internal speech. This is somewhat less control than what some victims report experiencing, but nonetheless is sufficient to illustrate most of the methods. Even if such devices are not available to some particular group, variations of most of the techniques can be created by lower-tech methods like standard surveillance devices and external zapping or voice projection devices, which are publicly known to exist. The point is not the particular technological implementation, but what the victim experiences. Next, the real-time idiot and the autopig. The term I use for an external voice projected into a victim's mind is the real-time idiot. For an illustration of what the real-time idiots seem like, consider a secret studio like at a radio station. The DJs in this case are the rapist's monitors who sit and listen to the violated thoughts of the victim. These torturers also have microphones where they can converse with the unfortunate victim in real time. The victim hears these transmitted voices in his or her head. Perhaps the rapists also have a virtual reality computer display of everything the victim is doing at the time, or even a display of exactly what the victim sees through his or her eyes. Any thoughts the victim has, the real-time idiots try to pretend it is like a conversation with them. You could not think a rhetorical question to yourself in your own private thoughts without the real-time idiot's comments. You could not pause for a moment of silent mental reflection. They comment on things, they harass, they goad, they distract, they try to issue commands, they attempt to demean the victim's "go brush your teeth." This all while the victim tries to live his or her regular, ordinary life and interact in a phony society. At this point I have described the technique whereby Nazi pigs beam words and voices into the mind of the victims in order to harass and torture them. This requires too many low-level Auschwitz guards, though. These dumb sadists may get drunk and start talking, or they may get religion and try to expose their former activities. The need for personnel also limits the number of victims, or subscribers, who can be controlled by the system. The American answer, of course, is to use technology to automate the process and increase productivity. This results in a device I call the Autopig, or the Cameron/Delgado Memorial Autopig. The autopig at its simplest is just a digital recorder that sends fixed messages to the victims at random times. This is very similar to Cameron's psychic driving torture that he inflicted on people coming in for psychiatric health care. I sometimes call these random pulses, Bergeron pulses, after Vonnegut's short story Harassment Bergeron, not the movie, which is good but different from the short story. In the story, all people were forced to be equal by handicapping those with exceptional abilities, and strong thinkers had to wear a device which would periodically emit a loud tone designed to disrupt their thought stream. Of course, an autopig could also be used as a computer-aided torture device so that a single human torturer could switch between victims, secure in knowing that none of them was being left alone in their private minds. The Delgado part comes in when the device gets feedback from the victim's brain and sends an appropriate message. That is, the sensor system analyzes the brain rape data, an AI-like algorithm decides what sort of response to send to the victim, and then the digital voice simulator constructs it and sends it. Thus each victim has his or her own electric fence, or something like the invisible fencing they use on dogs, but more technologically sophisticated. You can consider things like stateful autopigs and stateless, or memoryless, autopigs, and so forth. It is basic engineering. Besides real-time idiots and autopigs, there is something I call a Delgado button. A Delgado button is a button the harasses can press and which stimulates some part of the brain. There may be many Delgado buttons, for example, and the harasses learn what each one does empirically by observing the victims. To the victim, a Delgado button would just feel like some sensation, experience, or emotion came over them all of a sudden. It might occur at a particularly inappropriate time, for example. It might also serve as a distraction when the pigs wanted to stop some particular thought train you were having. It might be difficult to notice. Some subjects in published research would rationalize such induced behaviors and say that they just decided to do whatever behavior the buttons evoked. A Delgado button also need not literally be a button and a brain electrode. It could also be something like a microwave beam at a particular frequency and with a particular modulation aimed at a person. Metaphorically, there can also be conditioned software Delgado buttons in addition to the hardware wired-in electrode buttons. On our next episode, data analysis under torture, internal and external thoughts and sensory inputs and the protocol. Visit www.targetedindividualscanada.wordpress.com for more information.